We're live. Happy Monday, by the way, Kye.
Happy Monday.
Okay, cool. So you're joining me on a Heart Dealer value session. What is a value session? My company, V13 Media, has 13 Vs, 13 values that mean a lot to me and mean a lot to everything that we do, from Vita, Veritas, Vox Populi, Life, Truth, Voice of the People. It kind of started to grow from there. And you ended up picking Virtue and Vigour, which we'll talk about in more detail. But first, Kye Alfred Hillig, Tacoma, Washington-based singer-songwriter whose music kind of like really leans into the folky realm. You got a new 11-track LP out as of, I think it was August 5th, or
Yes,
yeah,
that's
I guess
right.
last week.
Yeah.
Widowmaker Express. What a title. Welcome. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to unpack things for sure, but Virtue, we find our commitment to excellence and ethical standards we uphold in our work. Vigour, number 12, resilience and persistence, embodies our resilience and persistence in the face of challenges. Uh, why did you pick those two of the 13? I mean, was there something specific that drew you?
Yeah. Well, the whole list spoke to me, so it's really actually kind of hard to narrow it down. But yeah, virtue, the commitment to excellence. I think about this all the time and what that means, because like that's really a commitment to excellence within myself. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like what what's gonna I want my work to reach a level that I'm satisfied with it. Because the way the rest of the world interprets or feels about it, I have no control over. But for me, it's a matter of pride in that I want to be able to look back on my life and be proud of what I've done and not feel like I compromised or I allowed the kind of creative vision that I had for projects to not be seen all the way through. And I feel very grateful that I've had the creative control to make that happen. Because I can look back on, I mean, I'm now 10 solo records in, and I'm proud of all of them. I love them all for different reasons. And so, to me, to have moved through time now and to still feel so strongly about all of them is kind of speaks to that thing that I'm talking about, when it comes to like the commitment to excellence. Like, I don't want to
Mhm.
release something I feel half-hearted about. I don't want a song on a record I feel half-hearted about. And the way that I get there is by writing just a ton of songs. For a given record, typically I'm writing somewhere between 40 and to in some examples 100 songs for a batch, and narrowing those down. And that's how I try to get it there. And I want to, and I know when I don't have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I'm listening to, I can feel in my bones like, woo, I think I might need to do 20 more, um, to try to make sure I'm putting out something that I can kind of stand behind. So that's where virtue kind of clicked for me. Was like, it's going
Mhm.
to be done the way I know it should be done, and if folks are getting something from me, they can expect it'll be a little different than the last thing, and that my heart's all the way in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and just funny in your response there, you really nicely alluded to Vigor and your ability to kind of keep going. I mean, 10 albums is insane. Most people never get to that. Most artists don't get to that in a lifetime, let alone in the amount of life that you've lived so far. Because I'm sure you've got
Right.
another 10 in you somewhere. That's crazy. So virtue for you sounds like it's almost staying true to yourself, to making sure that you're showing up as authentically as possible to yourself and thereby to your art, so that there's no compromise from the vision you have and from that, I guess, feeling internally of what this album feels like it should be. Does that sound accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think especially with this last one, it turned out in the exact way that I envisioned it, which normally it's kind of adjacent to what I had in mind. As far as like in the, it, you know, and bringing it into being, a lot of times it evolves and changes from the original idea, but in a surprising good way. But this one was really just how it fell out of how I envisioned it in my mind is how it came out in the end, which was
Yeah.
good.
So let's talk a bit about more about virtue before we, get into vigor. So coming into this call, as you told me before we hit record, that story about the family dying in the fire, the house fire, and you saved your guitar and they've never heard the music is not true, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah,
That is
it's not
a
true.
crazy hook. I was like, oh my god, I gotta talk to Kye. This is insane. There are other hooks, and we'll talk about that too. But how did that story come about? Like, what? Give me the backstory.
Yeah, this is me being a jerk essentially. So like, venues, I used when for years I would just send people a very cooked down bio that just was said Tacoma, Washington singer songwriter. That's what the truth is. But a lot of venues would give me pushback and they would say, we need, give us some, we need more judge. Give us, give us something with a little bit more of an angle. And after I heard that enough times, I just wrote that little snippet. I was thinking about there's that Hemingway story where he wrote like the one sentence thing that was like, baby shoes for sale, never worn, this sort
Mhm.
of thing. And I thought, well, maybe I could cook down a bio in a similarly upsetting way and most of the time the venues don't use it but they don't ask for more, so it's a nice way of like I don't have to cook up something else while at the same time I'm giving myself a chuckle.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I think it was an incredible hook, and, as someone who gets 400 pitches a day from publicists, labels, musicians, it's the succinct answers, it's the sorry, pitches, right, that come through that are gonna get my attention. It's the ones that do have a hook. When I get this massive long bio with all these things, I don't have time to distill that down and make a
Right.
decision. I need to just keep going. So good on you for having a good, a good line. But that being said, it's not, uh it's still telling of who you are because there's so much to your story that seems like it goes heavy into mental wellness and whatnot. I mean, even just the line that you write from the fractures of the Pacific Northwest, capturing the heart of a city deeply misunderstood. It seems like there's a lot of emotion in you and in what you're doing, in how you live. And then we can obviously talk a bit about the album and the emergency that got you there. What do you
Right.
think?
Yeah. So I mean, in regards to like the Tacoma being kind of underappreciated, is that what you mean?
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, so I mean, Tacoma in our area is like is like the joke of the Seattle and of the Pacific Northwest area in general. And no one, if you ask people where they're from, nobody wants to say they're from Tacoma. It's like it's known for being a bit roughneck. And I kind of like it that way. I like that the
Mhm.
city's a little rough around the edges and that it's not somewhere where you can, easily just put your Starbucks or whatever. You know what I mean? It comes with a certain level of authenticity, and I like that about the city. And so I think that's kind of why I lean into it so much, is because I think it's a really special place, and I don't think that people have really gotten it yet. And so because of that, I think that also kind of to some degree reflects how I feel about myself and my work creatively. Um, I'm not going for an easy grab here. You know what I mean? I'm not ever going to sell millions of records. That's not the approach here. I'm doing a very specific thing that's aimed in a direction, and a lot of that's just to take care of myself. Making music is not optional for me.
Mhm.
I have got to create things to take care of myself. A lot of times, I don't even know how I feel about something that's happened to me until I've metabolized it through writing a song, and then I go, "Oh, okay, I now understand myself better." But without that sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, the thresher or whatever to pull that through. Um, I don't really have the right mechanisms in place to take care of myself well. So um, it's I think sometimes there's all these kind of platitudes about creativity and art saving people, And it's annoying to hear that stuff, but it's also true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really can be that big of a deal, and it definitely has been for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, the podcast for me is a lot of that. I get to spend time with artists and creatives like yourself and really talk about the experiences we've gone through and share. I get to hold up a mirror to you and to myself and learn and grow along the way. It sounds like there's more to your upbringing and where you live and what you do than meets the eye here, because social services, I believe, is where you work.
Yeah.
And that also plays into how you see humanity and maybe how you're approaching yourself and then putting it out through the songwriting. Why don't you tell me a bit more about, what you do for a living and how it factors in?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've been in social services for most of my life. I didn't after graduating high school and stuff, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself outside of playing music. That's the only thing that's been a constant thread. But outside of that, I was like, that clearly doesn't pay the bills for most people. It certainly doesn't for me. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do career wise. And I ended up working for a disaster restoration company that did many things, mold, fire, this sort of thing. After someone had something horrible happen, but I also worked in our kind of trauma side of things. So if someone had hurt themselves or were hurt by somebody else, we would come and do like bio cleanup. And through that process, I was engaging with families that were in these really challenging positions. It's the worst day of their life, right?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my first clue that maybe social services might be for me. And I went from there to working at a funeral home for 4 years, working the services and picking up folks that had passed away out in the public. Um, and then that kind of led into a bunch of other stuff. I worked for an institution where we had folks that were both developmentally delayed and also mentally unhealthy.
Right.
And now I've worked with in affordable housing for the housing authority for some years, almost a decade since then.
Was music a big part of your life already before your career, or did it happen afterwards?
Yes.
I'm curious
Yeah.
about the
No.
overlap.
I've been playing in I've I've been playing in bands since I was about 12. I got a guitar and pretty much immediately had punk bands right out the gate. So I was in middle school
Awesome.
and playing shows and stuff already. And that's been the punk thing was like the first, I don't know, 10 or so years of my musical career was spent in that sphere, which was quite an education, but a lot of that kind of stuck to the ribs as far as like, there's certain values that are inherent in that community that's really about kind of doing your own thing and not really letting public opinion sway what you do. And there's a little bit of that attitude that's kind of run through into my current work, even though no one would make a parallel between likely what I do now and punk music. It's an underlying thread for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not folk punk, but I can see how you as a creative have a bit of that, punk ethos underneath it all, in the sense that you're going to create for yourself. You're going to create without rules, screw everything. This is what's happening. Uh, I
Yeah,
asked,
that's right.
I, I asked that question before simply because I'm fascinated by art. For some people, art is everything and it starts there and that's all it is. For others, art happens after some big catalyst and
Mm,
becomes the healing mechanism or the vehicle for healing. It sounds like
right.
it was there for you and then somehow inadvertently became the release. Do you maybe feel like your um proficiency and how much you're actually producing, like the volume went up when the stress of how much you were seeing from life went up? Do you think they're connected?
They might be. I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, I've had a really consistent output the entire time I've been making music, but the subject matter I think has shifted dramatically towards human suffering over time, and a lot of that's from witnessing it firsthand, either through my work or just through my lived life. You know what I mean? Anybody who lives long enough will experience notable tragedies. There's no story that ends well if you follow it to the end, you know, like,
Mhm.
and so that the subject matter, I think, has gotten a little grimmer over time, which I don't want to do that. I would love to make dance music and make people happy and skip and you know, like stuff people could go out and party to, but it's not in me. I mean, unfortunately, for better or worse, I'm going after your vitals.
Yeah, I mean, that's that authenticity, that's that, virtue. You are writing stuff because it sounds like you need to. Like, for your mental wellness and your survival, you need to get these things out, and you're allowing for it to just flow from subconscious to song lyrics, and it's probably a
100%.
healing process for you.
Yeah, absolutely, without question. I mean, there was a couple year period where I tried to step away from it and have a, you know, like a vacation from it because I've been doing
Mm,
it so long, and very quickly realized that was the exact wrong move. And quickly, I mean, this is my second record of 2026, so if that goes to show you the mode I've been in to try to correct
yeah.
that mistake, you know, like, that's not a coincidence, you know, and likely I'll have a new one out in 2027. So, you know, like I'm burning full speed right now.
Are there things you do outside of your music to help with your mental wellness? Like, with all the stuff that you've seen and done and are doing with your job, are there other things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I go to therapy. I have an art therapist that I see, because you know, she specifically works with people who, you know, are like me. They're crazy people who make stuff. And I also exercise is a big thing for me. So getting out on walks is major. Being around animals is a big deal for me. And then also reading. Like I have, if I don't get a couple hours of reading every night, I don't feel my balance is off. I've got to read, so I've always got a stack of, you know, 4 or 5 books that I'm putting a dent in, kinda at any given moment.
I love that. I appreciate you sharing. There's no right or wrong answer, and there's no right or wrong way to handle life's loads. I mean, I could say there are wrong ways. I apologize, because like, if you're
No,
sitting
no,
around
it's okay.
drinking all day long, that's probably not going to be productive. But I mean, in terms of
Probably
the
not.
positive ways, there is no right or wrong. Whatever works for you. Um, you are, what is the line? Building a reputation on an uncompromising artistic philosophy, trade comfort for truth. You know, so where does that come from? Because that, I think, also ties into this idea of virtue.
Yeah, I'm not interested in, appeasement behaviors with a listener. You know, my goal is not to make you feel good necessarily. I would rather you have an authentic experience that mirrors a feeling inside of yourself. You know, I think music is kind of magic in the way that, you know, I'm it's a Wizard of Oz sort of trick of I'm trying to put my feelings into your body. And I that that requires, I think, a certain level of um, immediacy that I don't think you really necessarily achieve in a kind of a common pop song. I am really interested in upsetting you. That's what I want to do. The biggest compliment that I ever have is someone telling me they cried listening to one of my songs. Um, this is not casual music. You know, I it means more to me to know that it connected with you at your core than anything else. And so that doesn't mean I'm gonna tell you things you wanna hear. It means I'm gonna tell you things that you know to be the case.
Yeah. I love that. I do think direct but diplomatic, firm but fair. Those are some of the lines I use in my world, in my house.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, with social work, you can't always be so direct because you're dealing with different emotions, different types of people. Do you think that you're more bullish with your songwriting because you can't be as much within your day job? Is it almost like you compromising?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need to have some filters, you know? In my private life I'm much more direct.
Mm.
I don't have any issue with that. So my songwriting in my private life, um, absolutely, I will say, and yeah, anything almost to a fault. Sometimes I'm just like, let's see how this fits in the room, you know. Um, Even if I don't necessarily believe it myself, I'm toying with ideas, you know. But in a professional setting, if I'm working with people that are struggling, I have to be a lot more thoughtful in how I engage with them because it's not about me; it's about them. And so within that sort of a setup, I'm a lot more trying to constantly turn it over to who I'm talking to. And I'm far less bullish in that environment because it's not my place to be, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, so you're already like that by nature. This isn't something like where you're holding back so much during your day job and regular life that you allow yourself to unleash it with the songwriting. You already have that balance in you regardless of the music.
Yeah, I would say so. The music more serves to like get to it's sucking the venom out of my leg. It's helping me move that stuff through. So, any of the innumerable horrors that I've had to bear witness to,
Mm.
that's me kind of filtering it out.
Yeah. Your music is your therapy or one large facet of it, which I appreciate. Um, cool. Virtue. Lots of virtue. Vigor. This is 10 albums in now. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
10 total albums?
yeah,
And sorry, Widowmaker Express is the 10th.
it is the 10th. Yeah, yeah.
That's wild, man. And what's the trajectory? Like how 10 albums in how many years?
10 albums since I think the first one came out in 2012.
Wow. I mean, that's a pretty stellar rate of, more than one every 2 years, and you said you just did 2 this year. What is precipitating this? Like some people are like myself. I have this need to make up for lost time. I feel like I wasted, a decade in and around university and afterwards smoking too much pot and not doing anything with my life. And now I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, let's triple down and make up for lost time because I've got so much I want to do. What's
right.
pushing you? What's pushing your vigor?
Just curiosity, I don't like being bored, I like exploring ideas, I like exploring, like, my inner terrain. So, like, it's just what else I mean, you could sit around and you can watch Netflix and wait to die, or you can make something, and I just think making something is so much more interesting. Your life has so much more quality to it. I don't know what other people are out there doing, like, if you're not but this is just coming through my own life experience, like, the fact that
Hmm.
everybody's not making art of some kind is mind-blowing to me. I'm like, "Where do you put all the garbage? Where's the
Yeah,
garbage dump?" Like, I so for me, it's just, it's it's just the best thing you could possibly do with your time. I heard some quote a while back that was like, paintings and things like this decorate space and music decorates time. And I'm like, what better thing could you do than, you know, garnish the moment with some of these ornaments, like it's a really magnificent thing and it's magic. It's pure magic. I don't claim to know how it works, but I love being able to show up for it and cultivate. And it's such a cool, rewarding thing for there to be absolutely nothing. And then all of a sudden there's artwork and there's a sound and there's a feeling. And I mean, it's the why do people have children? You know what I
yeah.
mean? It feels that same way to me. It feels just like you wanna bring life into the world, you know what I mean? Um,
Mhm.
and so that's where it is, and it's just I'm stubborn, there's a bullishness to it where I don't failure or whatever you would describe that as doesn't scare me at all. I just think, "Great, another boxing match, let's go," So that's kinda how I feel about it, is just like I'm gonna make as much of this sort of stuff and try to have the biggest impact on other human beings via the art that I can before I'm dead.
I love that. You're definitely a lifer in the traditional sense of when you find your passion, your purpose, your ikigai, as the Japanese call it. You just can't not do it. You wake up and you're compelled to do it. Late last year in October, this artist Wino, Scott Wino, Weinrich or Weinrich, however you pronounce his last name, he dropped an album called Create or Die. And that really resonated with me because,
Yeah,
as you mentioned kids there, for me, art, any type of activity surrounding entrepreneurship, being a parent, that's all creation, right? And so for me, the create or die is like, if you're not doing that, if you're not producing something of value for this world, then that time is wasted. And that just drives me personally so much with, okay, what are you doing today to better this world or
yeah,
better yourself or both?
right. Yeah, you don't wanna waste that time, like, what are you doing? How many times are you gonna go to dinner? You know what I mean? Like, get busy, go make something, you know what I mean? Like, that
Yeah.
spinning wheel stuff just drives me nuts. What was the Japanese term you mentioned? I wasn't familiar with that.
Ikigai.
Yeah, yeah, is there a kind of a you defined it a little bit, but can you say more about that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I mean, Ikigai is I read a book. It's literally just called Ikigai. It's their term for I believe what the French would say is a raison d'être, like the purpose of living, right? So when
Oh,
they were looking at the blue zones in this book that I was reading, and they were focusing on Japan and looking at the people that lived the longest and had the most, happiest, longest, most fulfilled lives. And yes, there's diet and exercise and a bunch of other things, but one of the biggest things that they always said was, when you find your purpose, you are the happiest and the most content and the most fulfilled. And with that comes this constant need to build and create, this desire, this reason for waking up in the morning. And because they have that and don't lose it, their life just seems so fulfilled and long.
I love that. Yeah, hard agree. Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful.
So why don't we talk a bit about your latest album and kind of wrap around that with with Vigor and 10 albums and whatnot. Before we get into the album itself, I just wanted to mention On Small Wings, which I loved. I'm just reading this. It urges you at the end of a difficult chapter of life to recognize that love is what we're all here to experience, and to give back to one another. And I think that ties into, this creation we were just talking about, whether it's art or family. Um, where did that song come from? And talk to me a bit about that idea of love.
Yeah, the thread of that one was really, I know some people who are getting on in years, and the big parade never came for them, and mainly I was thinking of this in terms of romantic connection with other people. Like, there's some folks out who are just marvelous human beings who, for whatever reason, just have never found their person. You know what I mean? Or that thing that they sought after, maybe when they were younger, just didn't show up. And but yet I know some people who, like, on Marriage 4 nailed it. You know what I mean? And so, like, to me, it was, I wanted to kind of encourage people to be patient, um, because love is worth waiting for and it's worth investing in. There's simply nothing better in the world. And I think sometimes people start to get um, selfish, and I think, like, things like dating apps and stuff like that only exacerbate this issue of turning love into a vending machine. You know what I mean? And what a crime that is, that people don't invest in each other more, or you treat someone you're spending time with like a Snickers bar. It's just a really unfortunate turn of events. And so I
Mhm.
want people to slow down and be patient and invest in love. I just think that's the best thing you could possibly do, however that shows up in your life.
I fully agree. I mean, as someone who unfortunately has two failed marriages, and now I'm going to be going into a third one, I know that love is worth fighting for. What I didn't
Absolutely.
know is that I had to figure out my own self-love before I could be really powerful and ready for that ebb and flow of love with someone else. Now, I've been
Yeah.
in love and have had lots of amazing relationships in my lifetime with girlfriends and wives,
Mhm.
but there was a certain part of me that wasn't healed, healthy, or loved by my own self, which is what I
Right.
think led to the downfall of those. So for me, it's a fascinating point that yes, love is definitely worth fighting for, but don't lose sight of the fact that you got to fight for your own love before others.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the hardest thing to do, I've tried to encourage people to, once a day to stop and to say into the mirror, "I love myself," and how hard that is for people is so telling. No, people are so hard on themselves, and they beat
Mhm.
themselves up so much, and they're the last person they love. They will give themselves so little credit in that regard. And yet, to your point, I mean, it's so important if you're going to have a healthy engagement with somebody else that you have and that you have sent that love inward as well, or else, it's all going to get far too complicated to function at some point.
Yeah, agreed. Um, all right, Widowmaker Express, and congrats, by the way. I mean, like 4 days ago, I guess that thing dropped. Probably feels pretty good to get it out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's been really interesting the last couple days, all of a sudden, it's picked up a lot of steam. It's one that I kind of expected. It's not something you hear immediately and necessarily, it's a slow burn, and it asks a lot of the listener in some ways. So I kind of expected this to happen where, after people have given it a couple listens, then they kind of go, "Oh, okay, I understand what's going on here," and hopefully it clicks on that deeper level that I wanted it to.
Absolutely. I mean, the music's great. That's why we're speaking. I get pitches, and when I hear something that resonates with me, then that's what I want to pursue. Especially if the story tied to it is solid. Uh, there's a name behind, or sorry, there's a story behind the name about
Yeah.
a false alarm medical emergency. Why don't you share that story for us?
Yeah, so I it was probably about a year ago or so, I started having these really severe chest pains and was certain it was heart related, because everything I'd heard about, you know, having like an issue with your heart or a heart attack or things like this lined up pretty closely. And it was going on kind of subtly and then less subtly for about a week. And finally, the people around me were like, "Hey, you're being crazy. You need to go into the hospital." Because I don't
Yeah.
know, not to be grim, but part of me was like, if it's my time, what album 50, you know what I mean? But I went in and got checked out, and as soon as I went in, they were, treating me like a crazy person for not having come in sooner, and was immediately rushed into the back in front of everybody else who was in the waiting room, um, and they started hooking me up to machines and stuff like this, and it just felt like, I mean, I was internally having kind of conversations with the universe or whatever you wanna call it,
Hmm.
kinda thinking like, maybe I'm folding it in, and was weirdly at peace with that idea in that stretch. Um, but once they kind of checked me out and I'd been through all of these, kind of follow up appointments and things like that, it ended up being unrelated. It was like almost like a reflux issue that just mimicked that experience very closely to a scary degree. And so there was just a little bit of an existential hangover from that was like, well, why wasn't I more worried about that? And, you know, what does this all mean? And what am I doing here? And I think with that came a little bit of also like fist shaking at the universe of like, you know, it kind of accompanied nicely this time period where I was in a little bit of an argument with the powers that be, so to speak, of like, why do I have to do all this? Because like there's nothing I love more than art, and also it rakes you over the coals. You know what I mean? This is
Mm.
not an easy life. Being the kind of person um, that I am, a sensitive person, and making things and doing that in public, it's it's a DV relationship with the universe. It's not doing you a lot of favors, and so that was kind of the complexity that I was trying to work through here. Was on some level, why did I survive or not survive, and what does this all mean, and why am I here? And so some of the songs I tried to kind of set up in a way where I'm like, am I talking about a romantic partner, or am I talking to God?
Mhm.
And I wanted those two things to be possibilities. So that was kind of part of the thought process, was like, what if it works in both ways? I thought that might be an interesting idea to explore. So that was kind of at the heart of what I was trying to do with this.
Yeah. I mean, you're staying true to yourself in doing what you think you feel is right and not being like scared off from exploring something. I think the irony in there for me is that you have to endure it to be able to really talk about it well, right? You have to live it
Yeah.
to learn it, to then be able to express it. I learned a valuable lesson during my last divorce, which was, you know, you get empathy by going through things, right? So like I couldn't really speak and understand other people, speak to and understand people that were talking about divorce, having not been through it.
Right.
And I think that that's the beauty of life, is that these hardships and oh my God, life's so hard and
Yeah.
this thing happened to me, is it a negative or is it a positive? Because it
Right.
happened to you, and from that, you gained resilience and you gained the ability to connect with others that are enduring that same thing. Maybe dark is light and light is dark, because in the light, we get soft and we get happy and nothing happens. But
Yeah.
in dark, things are grinding and you change and you grow and you evolve.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I've grown a little bit more irritated with kind of the whining around life struggles, because this is the gig. It's a drama.
Right.
There's nobody who's who's getting out of the fire.
Yeah.
Like this is the experience, and I think if my strong guess is that we're here to learn, and that requires getting pummeled a little bit, and it's good to be in contact with the beauty and the peace of life, but it's also good to not forget that, every X amount of time, you're gonna have to rock and roll a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's you should never have the expectation that it's gonna be some smooth slide from one end to the other. If anything, I think it probably is gonna ramp up in its pummeling. You know?
And I think that metaphor is such a perfect place to like cap this conversation off with virtue and vigor, is like staying true to yourself, but also having the tenacity to keep going is the rock and roll, right? You have to be steadfast in your conviction. There has to be a rock. You have to be well grounded mentally and physically, but you have to roll. You have to have momentum. You have to keep going, and you have to be willing to roll with the proverbial punches in order
Yeah.
to keep going. Um,
Oh,
I think
100%.
Thanks for your time, Kai. It was great chatting with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been marvelous. Thank you so much, and all the best to you.